Y'all were in the corner, so I didn't want to.
He didn't want to put you in the picture.
It's not working. There's nothing in there.
We knew that. Oh wait.
I'll tell you what. Let's try this. How about this over here?
That's the wrong corner.
How's that? Is that better?
Now, unfortunately, Don may be in the picture. You want to get a picture?
I want to hear my last prints.
Okay. How about that? Is that better?
That'd be good. Okay.
What about a slide?
Huh?
What about a slide? Slide?
Well, the slides never show up on the.
Oh, they don't? Oh, I thought.
No,
At least, not that I know of.
Big bright
the
light.
white background.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just So, okay. Well, let's get started this evening. So we are studying about Joseph. Actually, we're studying about the Exodus, but our study starts in Joseph. Okay? So, where were we? All right. So Joseph, if you'll remember, his brothers have showed up. Finally, after 21 years, his brothers have showed up and Joseph's dream has come true. Okay? Not that he had a dream of being a pharaoh, but he dreamed a dream when he was young that his brothers would bow down before him. And we saw that happen last week, right? As we read the scriptures, okay? So he's seen his brothers. They bowed down before him. Y'all remember he accused them of being spies. No, we're not spies. We're not spies. Yeah, we're 12 brothers, and one is dead, and one is at home, and the 10 of us are here before you. See? 10? And he's, no, you're spies, And so he continues to deal with them very, very difficultly, or very, very harshly. But now Joseph sees an opportunity. This is where we're going. He sees an opportunity to recreate his predicament as a test for his brothers. Now, last week, remember, we talked about Joseph had not thought about home in years, okay? And we saw that by the way he named his kids. God has caused me to forget, right? So he had made his new home, all right? And so his brothers came in and it all came flooding back. We've seen him break down. He gets a little emotional. And so we see him as he's dealing with all this. Joseph now sees a chance to recreate his predicament. I do not believe, some folks will teach this, I do not believe that Joseph is vindictive. Okay? I think Joseph has learned through his experiences. Remember, it's 21 years that he's been. His 13 years as a slave and a prisoner, 7 years as a pharaoh. He's learned how to move on, as it were. Okay, and so he says he sees this a chance to test his brothers. Remember, we talked about this last week. That family, you want to talk about? You think your family's dysfunctional? That family was really out of it, right? And so he's testing his brothers. He has learned a lot. And he wants to know, are these the same guys that threw me in that hole? Right? And so he's going to test them. His statement that he comes back with, I am a God-fearing man. Right? He comes back and says, hey, I'm a God-fearing man. Right? Because he's going to throw them all in prison, remember? Y'all all going to prison. But he comes back and says, I'm a God-fearing man. Now, this isn't a generic statement. Okay? In other words, everybody had gods back in the day, right? There were no atheists. Everybody had God. You might have 20 of them.
Little G.
Little G's. Yeah, little G's. Right?
False gods, you could say.
Huh?
False gods.
False gods. There you go. False gods. Little G's. Okay? And so they would have them. But he doesn't say, hey, I have a God that I have to answer to. No. He says, I'm a God-fearing man. The word God that he uses there is Elohim. Okay? It is the Hebrew God. Right? It would be something like us saying, hey, look, I believe in the Bible. I live a Christian life, okay? So he's acknowledging the same God that these brothers have been raised to know, okay? And so, now remember that in this time there's no Jewishness or Judaism or Christianity yet, so it's not unusual to encounter someone outside the family that believes in Elohim, right? It wasn't unique or specific to just that family, right? Because remember that the nation of Israel is embodied in 12 men and their children. Okay? That's it. That's all of them. Okay? So the knowledge of Elohim is widespread. Not the people are beginning to embellish on it. Or they choose, hey, we're gonna add some more, right? And so only this family, this clan, has been chosen by God to progress down through the ages, okay? And so so we see Joseph now, he's going to change a little bit the conditions that he's going to deal with them. So we're going to pick our story up, Genesis 42. Hang on a minute, I'm going to get this on silent because one of my girls will text me for sure if I don't. Okay. All right. So he says we're going to pick our story up in verse 19. All right. If you read, now I'm reading out of the New Living Translation just to make it a little bit more modern in its English. If you really are honest men, okay. So this is how we end. He comes in. He says, "Okay, you know what? I'm a God-fearing man. If you really are honest men, choose one of your brothers to remain in prison." Now remember, he was throwing them all in. Okay? The rest of you may go home with grain for your starving families, but you must bring your youngest brother back to me. This will prove that you are speaking the truth, and you will not die. To this they agreed. Look at verse 21. Speaking among themselves, they said, "Clearly we are being punished because of what we did to Joseph long ago. We saw his anguish when he pleaded for his life, but we wouldn't listen. That's why we're in this trouble." Whoa. Let that sink in a minute. Okay. All right. "Didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy?" Reuben asked. That's not clear if Reuben is saying all of this or it's bouncing around between them, right? But Reuben, he's not gonna let an opportunity go to waste. Didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy?" Reuben asked. "But you wouldn't listen. And now we have to answer for his blood." Because you remember, Reuben's the one that said, no, just don't kill him. Just throw him in this hole. Reuben intended to come back and sneak him out of there and take him home to daddy. Right? So Reuben said, of course, I told you not to do this. Now, of course, they didn't know that Joseph understood them, for he had been speaking to them through an interpreter. Remember, I had everybody laughed, right? I had the little graphic, Joseph walked like an Egyptian, right? He talked like an Egyptian. He would not speak to them directly. He continued to hold himself strange to them. Okay? So he spoke to an interpreter. He spoke in whatever language the Egyptians spoke in, the Egyptierish, okay? Whatever it was. And then that interpreter went to Hebrew and spoke to them. So they didn't know that he could understand them. How many movies have we seen that way, where somebody says something in another language and the person they're talking about, oh, this happened to you? Or you've been talking about other people?
No, it doesn't. It happens all the time. People don't know I can speak Spanish.
Okay. So and what do you delight in doing? Right? Answering their questions in Spanish, right? But Joseph, he's holding up. Now, he turned away from them. He heard all of this, heard them talking about him. He turned away from them and began to weep. When he regained his composure, he spoke to them again. And then he chose Simon from among them and had him tied up right before their eyes. Okay. So Joseph is eavesdropping, right? He's listening to their conversation. They don't know that he can understand them. So the option to now leave one brother behind, a captive and thrown into prison, is too much of a parallel to ignore. As soon as he said that, I'm going to take one of you and throw you in prison, the memory of what they had done to Joseph exploded in their minds. Right, so what does that tell us? This is the part where y'all get to interact.
Guilty.
Oh, very good.
Regretful, remorseful.
Sir?
Regretful, remorseful.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, they felt guilty. There was a great regret. They have changed their minds about what they had done to Joseph. At the time, they thought it was the right thing to do. Right? They were blinded. But now the veil has come down. They've acknowledged this amongst themselves. And they've realized that their chickens have come home to roost. Okay? And so they're like, this is why this is happening. So we can assume then that after 21-ish years of living with the guilt, we see them. This is all a result of the guilt that they've lived with. Now, I want you to keep in mind something else too. You remember when they came home and they told Jacob that, hey, look, we found this code. Maybe, do you recognize it? We think maybe it's Jacob's. We're not sure. Yeah, right. And you remember Jacob's reaction, right? Jacob's reaction was he just had a meltdown, right? He just cratered. I think at that moment, if the brothers could have found a way back out of that situation, they might have taken it. But it was too late. They watched their father grow old before their eyes. I think that had a profound effect on them. Right? We see that now. They are acknowledging that this was a problem. What they did was wrong. Okay? And so there's something else now that comes to light here. Although it's not told to us, it's not related to us in the earlier story, we see that Joseph had pled for his life. He begged. Okay? But his brothers turned deaf ears. Right? I'll bet Joseph apologized for everything he had ever done. Right? I'm sorry. I'll never dream those dreams again. I'm sorry. Whatever it is I did that made you so mad, I'll never do it again. Just tell me, what did I do? Just tell me I'll never do it again. Just take me home, please. Take me home. Take me home. And they...
love for their child.
Huh?
It's a parent's love for their child.
Mm-hmm.
They'll do anything for their kids.
So he pled, he begged, and they refused to... No, we sold him. We sold him. You remember how much they sold him for?
20 pieces of silver.
20 pieces of silver. The going rate. The going rate was 20 pieces of silver. It was the going rate all the way up until the time of Christ. Right? A teenager got 20 pieces of silver.
Inflation.
That was 20 pieces of silver. It still wasn't Christ's time.
No, 30 pieces of
30.
silver.
No, that was for a man.
Oh, okay.
All right? 30 pieces of silver was for a full-grown man. Right? Inflation. Yeah, I know. Right?
Biden must have been on the throne. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Too soon?
Too soon.
All right. So he pled for his life. We don't often actually think about the effect that this kind of remorse has, this kind of regret. You chose two really good words. Regret, remorse, how much effect it has on our lives going forward. All right, when you think about, don't raise your hands. I don't want anybody to raise your hand. Have you ever done anything that is impossible to atone for, to make good? If let's say I break your cup, right? I break it. Say I do it willfully. I throw it on the ground. I stomp it, right? And then I realized, oh, I've broken. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I can go and buy you a new one, and I can make you whole again. Right? I can restore to you what you had. Right? So I have atoned. Right? But if I curse you, if I slap you, I can never take that pain away. You see what I'm saying? I can never take that away. That is an injury done to you that I can never atone for. Now you can forgive me for it. This is we're getting into some deep stuff here. This is the relationship between us and God. We have slapped him. We have spit in his face. We can never take that back, right? You ever said something and wish you could grab the words and put them back in your mouth, right?
Time or two.
Somehow I'm not surprised. And I'm right there with you, brother. I just want you to know. I have done it. I have run across the room and opened my mouth trying to catch them words before they get. But those words go out and you can never get them back. Like bullets from a gun.
Yep.
Okay? We have insulted, we have injured God in that way. We can't get it back. He has forgiven us. And the forgiveness isn't because we've made him whole, right? It's because of who he is. Okay? And so what we see here is that Joseph pleads for his life, right? And the brothers ignored it. And then they went home and they injured their father. Now, as far as Joseph is concerned, how do they make Joseph whole? They can't. God has made him whole. But the brothers cannot make Joseph whole. The brothers cannot make Jacob. There's too many J's here. The brothers cannot make Jacob whole. For 21 years, he has grieved. He's lived in a continual state of depression. The scripture says that he refused to be comforted. Right? When you look at Isaac, when his mama died, he took comfort in his wife. He was comforted, right? And we see this all through the Old Testament, all through Scripture, right? They would take comfort. When your wife died, you take comfort in your grandchildren or in your children, right? And so we take comfort this way. Jacob refused to be comforted. The loss of Joseph was that existential to him. Now, we can assume that he took some comfort in Benjamin, Joseph's younger brother. And we'll see that in a minute. Okay? And so Reuben, of course, doesn't miss the opportunity. He takes the role of older brother and provides one large "I told you so," right? And this revelation, right? What their conversation was, Reuben saying, "I told you not to do this." And this has an unexpected impact. Remember, we talked about Joseph. He had put all this behind him, right? Right? And we talked about some of the things he might have been thinking, right? It's obvious that his brothers hated him. They sold him, which was not a bad thing since they intended to kill him first, right? But his daddy never come looking for him. And so when Reuben says this, "I told you not to kill him. I told you not to hurt him. I told you not to do this," he realizes that it wasn't all of them. That Reuben tried to deliver him. Reuben tried to
assumed he was dead.
Exactly. And his father didn't know he was missing. His father knew he was, or was told he was dead. Right? And so a lot of things are hitting Joseph here. And what do we see him do? He begins to cry. He begins to weep. The emotion overwhelms him. Right? Now, we can assume, because later on in the story it says this, he actually has to leave the room. Now, here it just says he turned away. Right? So he was struggling with his emotions, and he turned away from them, and got himself back under control, and then continued his conversation with him. And in a few verses, we're going to see him melt down. Okay? This is how emotional he's getting, right? As he remembers, as he learns things about his own history that he did not know. Okay? Now, for the first time, Joseph is hearing about the argument between Reuben and the others. Okay? This is the first time he didn't know this. So he's hearing this argument. He's hearing this argument rehearsed again for him right there in the it's not the throne room, but in the wherever it was they were, right? It's a big place. Official office. Right? And he's hearing about this, and he's beginning to realize exactly what went on. Okay? And so he hears how Reuben has been against it. And of course we saw he understands every word they're saying. He's been speaking through an interpreter, so he's able to hear. How strange it must have been for Joseph to hear his native language again. 21 years, his wife is Egyptian, right? He's handling business for Pharaoh, so he would be doing that in Egypterish or whatever.
Hieroglyphics.
Yeah, hieroglyphics. Right? There he goes. Hey. Okay? So he would have been doing that. Now, perhaps he's taught his sons some of the language, but he's well studied. You know how to tell when you're fluent in a foreign language? Does anybody know how to
When
tell?
you surprise someone in that language, that's from that language.
You say what?
When you surprise someone that's
Surprise,
from that
okay.
language, in
Good.
that language.
Not bad answer, not what I'm looking for. How do you know when you're fluent in another language? When you think it. See, she's
Teacher's pet.
she teaches pet.
Gold star?
That's not
She got a gold
fair.
star.
Y'all are lame.
When you think it. Do what? What did you say?
I said that's not fair. Y'all are lame.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I'm using her brain cells right now. So when you think it, when you start to learn a foreign language, the sequence is you think it in English, right? And you translate it and speak it in whatever other language. When you actually start to think in the other language, so let's take Spanish for instance. When you actually start to think in Spanish, you are fluent in that language, right? Because there's no time delay. So Joseph is fluent. So like I said, how strange must it have been for him to hear his native language again, right? And so all of this is acting on Joseph. He turns away quickly because he begins to weep, right? Now, I don't know, this wasn't the very dramatic, drama queen diva weeping,
He wasn't blubbering.
Yeah, he wasn't blubbering,
Probably
but
crying silently.
yeah, a tear, right? He may have had a couple of tears run down his face. He was able, turn away and straighten them out. So we see all this. So we know that Joseph has been affected by meeting with his brothers, by seeing his brothers, right? Because he's learning that some of the things that he felt and thought aren't quite as he had remembered them or had felt that they were, right? He's beginning to learn a few things, okay? Now Joseph, after telling them to choose one of yours, he selects Simon. And that is an interesting choice, Simon. So why Simon? He knew his brothers. He knew their names. Okay? Why would he pick Simon? Why not Reuben? Why not Levi? Or Gad, or Asher, or Naphtali? Judah, right? Why not any of them? Why Simon, do you suppose? Well, Simon is the second oldest behind Reuben. Okay, so it's Reuben and then Simon. So Simon was the second oldest. So perhaps he was going to choose Reuben. And then he hears that Reuben defended him. Right? And so he says, no, I won't give Reuben a pass. I'll just go to the next oldest one. Maybe I'll pick Simon, okay? Maybe it's because Simon was the instigator of the massacre over Dinah. Now remember that story, right? We talked about that the sister was raped, right? And the locals, the family of the boy, thought, yeah, hey, this is a good thing because we'll convince them to start marrying in the clan with us, and then our children or their children will be our grandchildren, and we'll be able to steal all of their wealth away from them, right? And so Simon and Levi said, yeah, that's a great plan. We don't mind. Let's intermarry, right? Let's marry back and forth here. But yeah, we got this little thing, all our guys have got to be circumcised. And like we talked about a week ago, right? There's a reason they do it when you're only 8 days old. Mm-hmm. Right? So that you don't remember.
Yeah. So
when you're an adult and you get circumcised, it is quite painful. And so Simon and Levi, they agreed. They were all circumcised, and Simon and Levi waited for 3 days. And on the third day, when those guys were too sore to move, they walked into town, Simon and Levi, and they killed every man among them. They wiped out the whole clan, right? Jacob was so put out with them, he said, now I got to move because they're going to come after us. Relatives are coming, we got to move. They had to up and move their tents, right? So maybe that's why Simon got picked, because Simon was the instigator, right? Joseph remembers that Simon was the one that caused Daddy pain. And maybe, just maybe, right, Simon is the brother that it's going to be easiest to forget, And Dad never liked him anyway, After that whole deal with Dinah, he'll be easy to forget. He's getting what he deserves anyway. He's down there in that prison. He killed a whole town full of people. Now, it's an interesting thing to think about. Simon's, what you want to call it, his partner in crime was Levi. And who do the Levites become? Priests. Isn't that something, right? Levi was involved in that massacre, and yet it's his progeny, his children, who become the keepers of the Word of God. Right? Everybody can change. Everybody has worth in God's plan. So perhaps that's why, right? Joseph selected Simon. Maybe he's the second oldest. Maybe it's because he caused Dad pain. Maybe it's because he's going to be the easiest one to forget. Whatever the reasons for effect, he is tied up in front of them. And none too gently either. Right?
No, they kind of just tossed him in a hole, so.
Yeah, very good. Very good. They tied Joseph up and tossed him in a hole. And so he's tying up Simon and leading him away to prison. Right? He's recreating the conundrum. He's recreating the situation. A brother has been taken away from us. What will we do? What will we do? Whatever that reason is, okay, he's led away in bond. And what we're going to see is Joseph is upping the ante. Okay? Joseph's going to up the ante. He's not going to leave it at that. Oh no, he's going to put more pressure on him. So let's pick up our story. Joseph then ordered his servants to fill the men's sacks with grain, and he also gave secret instructions to return his brother's payment at the top of his sack, each brother's payment at the top of his sack. he also gave them supplies for their journey home. And so the brothers loaded their donkeys with grain and headed for home. But when they stopped for the night, one of them, I would love to have known which one this was. One of them opened his sack to get grain for his donkey, and he found his money in the top of his sack. "Look," he exclaimed to his brothers, "my money has been returned. It's here in my sack." And then their hearts sank. I imagine so. Right? There hasn't been a sinking like this. There wasn't a sinking like this until the Titanic. I practiced that joke all week. Oh, come on. That's still not funny. Ah, thank you, brother. Appreciate you. No gold star for
Let
you.
me tell you something. When Shade says something in Bible study, you deserve that.
No gold star for you. Okay, he said, then their hearts sank. Trembling, they said to each other, "What has God done to us?" Right? What has God done to us? So Joseph's up in the ante. He puts the silver back in their sacks. Now, why would he do that? This is another opportunity for you to discuss amongst yourselves, find an answer.
Test to see what they do.
A test? That's not bad. That's not bad. Like that answer? Anybody else? No other thoughts?
See if they're fine.
Oh, that's everybody thinking at once. I'm overwhelmed, right? Remorse? Remorse? Is that what
The brothers would feel.
Oh, so yeah, okay. Right, and that's what I mean by up in the ante. He's really going to lay it on thick now for him, right? He saw what happened to him in the discussion. He's heard what they had to say, okay? So he puts the silver back in their sacks. Now he knows about their greed, right? Because what did they sell him for? Silver. 20 pieces of silver. Now, Scripture doesn't say, but I wonder if it was 20 pieces of silver in each bag. I don't know. All right? He's also heard... Huh?
The irony.
The irony. The irony. He's heard their anguish. He's heard their guilt. But notice that it's only one. Now, this, I think, is testament to how panicked they got over this, right? I think they were paralyzed. Remember, it says their hearts tremble. What has God done to us? And none of the other brothers went and opened their bags, right? I think they were afraid to go look, right? Because if everybody had it, they knew God. Have you ever been in a situation where, like this, if this happens, I know God is against me, right? God is, right?
A few situations.
Yeah, the situation. Yeah, exactly. So what's going on? That's what I said. Their hearts sank, right? This was, I mean, they absolutely almost lost the will to live. This was a nightmare, okay? And so I said only one of them. I wonder how much it was, right? Wouldn't it have been just delicious for that to be 20 pieces? We don't know. Scripture didn't say how much each of them brought. Well, however much it was, the irony.
Well, for them to say, "What has God done to us?" I mean, yeah, it's kind of hard to not believe that it would.
They already had recognized the parallels, right? We saw that in the verses before. They have already recognized the parallels, right? They may not have ever stopped to count it. They may have just looked at him and, oh my God. They know silver, right? And it's like God is setting us up.
Like,
right? This is punishment.
You know what you did.
Right? You know what you did, right? So I also, like I said, I also wonder which one it was, right?
He gave them chump change. Now that I think about it, because if he worked for the pharaohs, he'd be rich.
Oh, he was.
Yeah.
But the idea here was not that it was just any silver. It was the price of the grain that they had bought. Okay? Now, remember, what did they say? We are honest men. Right? And they said this to who? Joseph. Right? The one guy in the world who would look at them and go, yeah, right.
I'm surprised he was able to stand there with a straight face and not go.
Yeah. Right? Right?
Yeah.
Honest. I could just honest by foot, you know.
I mean, he would have to. If he was working for the Pharaohs, they would kill him for doing it.
He was, well, I remember. Now, see, he wasn't just working for the Pharaoh. He was Pharaoh's man. There was nobody in that kingdom that was higher than him except Pharaoh.
Fair point.
Okay? He was like vice Pharaoh. Okay? So,
He's the Pharaoh's chairman. You
that's
have to
right.
talk to him
He's
before the Pharaoh.
exactly so. And Pharaoh had told him, if anything's going to happen in this country, it better be on your word or that person will die. In other words, Joseph had complete control. Okay? If Joseph had done that, like that, the guards would have just killed them all right there and said, well, you kind of said that. No. So, but I wonder which one of the brothers it was. Was it Levi? Right? That opened their bag? Which one? It doesn't really matter because it had the desired effect. All right?
So when you go back to the story, who was the one that did negotiating for the 20 pieces of silver?
Judah. It was Judah.
It may have been Judah that.
So it may have been Judah that.
So for me, that would be a cool parallel, I think, because it is from the tribe of Judah that the Redeemer would come.
There's some interesting things about Judah that we'll get into as we go through this story, and we'll get there. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So the brothers, if they thought it was possible that all of this was coming on them because of Joseph, they are convinced now that God is punishing them for Joseph. The silver, the whole 9 yards, okay? And so they held themselves up as honest men, right? And now they're being shown as liars and thieves. Now, they haven't done the crime at that moment, but they had done it before. They stole Joseph. And they lied about it to their father. And they have sat on that crime for 21 years or ish. Okay? 21-ish years. So, continuing, picking up in verse 29, our story. When the brothers came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him everything that had happened to them. Okay? The man who is governor of the land spoke very harshly to us, they told him. He accused us of being spies, scouting the land. But we said, we are honest men, not spies. I can just see them telling their dad how they stood up to Joseph, right? We are 12 brothers, sons of one father. One brother is no longer with us, and the youngest is at home with our father in the land of Canaan. Then the man who is governor of the land told us, this is how I will find out if you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers here with me. Take the grain for your starving families and go on home. But you must bring your youngest brother back to me, and then I will know you are honest men and not spies. And then I will give you back your brother, and you may trade freely in the land. And as they emptied out their sacks, there, in each man's sack, was the bag of money he had paid for the grain. The brothers and their father were terrified when they saw the bags of money. And Jacob exclaimed, you are robbing me of my children. Joseph is gone. Simeon is gone. And now you want to take Benjamin too? Everything is going against me. Since the supposed death of Joseph, Jacob has felt cursed, or at least unblessed by God. Right? Remember, Jacob is the man who God God gave him a dream when he served Laban, right? And he said, you know, when you bring your livestock into the chutes to mate them, to breed them, if you will peel the skin off of a poplar branch so that it is striped, you know, peel it off in strips so that it's various colors, and you put that in front of them as they mate, you'll get spotted or striped offspring. And the deal that he had with Laban was, Laban wanted all the solid cuddling animals, and he could have all the spotted ones or striped ones. So God said, do this and they'll all be striped. And then when Laban said, hey, wait a minute, this is getting out of hand. There's more striped being born than not. He said, okay, well, I'm changing the deal. He said, I'm going to keep the striped ones, you get the solid ones. So Joseph took the sticks away. And then they was all solid. You're like, what's up with that? Right? Everything Jacob did was blessed. He left out of that country when he went home a wealthy man. God was with him at every turn. God showed him the ladder going up into heaven, the angels coming in and out. He wrestled with an angel of God. Right? He wrestled with an angel of God and demanded a blessing of him before he beat him. Now, I'm not saying that the angel didn't, you know, kind of like a daddy with a 3-year-old, right? Oh, you got me, son. You got me. You got me. He said, let me go. No, Daddy, you got to bless me before I let you go. And he blessed him.
Well, not only that, being in Egypt, he was blessed.
Well, he's about to be. Right. This is Jacob I'm talking about, though.
Jacob is a really good example of somebody who favor of God, favor of God, favor of God. And suddenly, when life is life, a crisis of faith happens. It's like, God has rejected me. No, life is happening. But he is showing through Scripture that even the heroes of the faith are no different than us. They have those moments of crisis.
Right. And while he became depressed, okay, he never released his faith. In other words, he never turned his back to God. God is against me, right? And we saw that. God is against me. But just like Job, right? And this is the common thing. Just like Job, right? Though he slay me, still I will trust him. He didn't know what God's plan was, but he was not going to quit following God. Right? I don't know why God's doing this to me. There's something I used to, with my former pastor many years ago, we would get into tight spots in the church business, and things would get really tough. And one of the things we like to say one to the other, depending on what was going on, was, so what we need to do is sit down and try to figure out what God's trying to teach us and learn it so we can get through this trial. Because we knew God, it's a trial, but God's trying to teach us something. God's showing us something. Now, sometimes all God is doing is showing you your strength. Right? Sometimes he's showing you a weakness. Sometimes he's showing you where you need to improve. Not necessarily that you have a weakness, but where you can improve. And sometimes he's just showing your strength. Remember, Job had done no sin. You remember that? When we studied Job for how long?
Year and a half.
Year and a half. You think it's longer every time you answer the question.
Don't ask them.
I do wonder, what type of angel was he fighting? Like, was he fighting a normal angel, an archangel, a seraphim?
Doesn't say. It just said the angel. Said he was wrestling with an angel. Even the weakest angel could have taken Joseph on his worst day.
Yeah.
But again, like I said,
You got to go, to understand who he actually was wrestling, you would have to do a word study of the Hebrew word used to describe angel in that text. Because some theologians believe he was actually wrestling the Lord himself.
True. But there are many instances where the Lord's presence is projected via an angel.
That's true. Yes.
Right? And so, yeah, I think anytime you stand in front of an angel, you stand in front of the Lord God himself.
Because there's some angels he sends down to deliver messages. And
That is true.
They're often called the messengers of God and God's holy ones.
That is true. But we don't know. It just says he wrestled an angel. So But again, I don't think Jacob was strong enough to beat an angel outright. But the angel was just like a father with a 3-year-old, right? Oh, you got me, son, you got me, right? But Jacob now sinks into this depression, right? Everything is going against me. You robbed me. Joseph is gone. Simeon is gone. And this is the first time that we've seen any affection that Jacob had toward the other children. Right? We saw Joseph, right? Coat of many colors, favorite of his father, etc., etc. But he doesn't hate the other boys. They are still his boys. And he still loves them. Joseph was his favorite, but that didn't mean he hated the others. And we see that here. Simeon is gone. Now you want to take Benjamin too, okay? So now what we see here is their fear turns into full-blown panic. All right, they get home and the money keeps popping out of the bags. And pretty soon it's like, wait a minute. We didn't pay for this grain, any of it. Now, one can look at this in a vacuum and say, isn't this just like God? Right? God gives us provision and then blesses us. We don't have to pay for it. He gives us payment on top of it. Right? And Joseph is taking care of his brothers. So each of them is discovering their payments in their bags. And this is all happening in front of their father. Right? So what happened on the road, right, with the one of them, right, they were telling him how they talked back to Joseph. Oh, yeah, we said we were honest men. But you notice they didn't say, and on the road back we found one. No. Then they start dumping out their grain, and out comes this money, and there's their father standing there. And so what I'm thinking this is every time a bag of money drops out, it's another dart in the heart. It's a heart dart. Okay? Look what you did to Joseph. You sold him. And this is all coming out in front of Jacob. Right? And so their conscience is screaming at them. Right? Jacob doesn't know. They haven't told him yet. Right? But in their minds, this is humiliations. This is exposure of their sin. Right? Nobody else realizes what's going on. Just the guilty parties. But to them, the whole world is seeing this. You notice how whenever you're guilty and your life starts to unravel, you feel like everybody knows. Talk to them later and they're like, nobody knew. We just wondering what's the matter with you. Right? But so that's what's happening. Their conscience is screaming at them. And then their father says, you are robbing me of my children. He doesn't just say, oh, my poor Simon or Simeon, right? Oh, you're not taking Benjamin. Who's he got to bring up first? Joseph. 21 years, and Joseph is still top of mind.
That's some real love right there.
Joseph is still there, and so he brings this up. So I want you to put yourself in the place of the brothers, right? The bags of money are falling out, and then their father says, you're robbing me of my children. Joseph is gone, and that's got to be, right? That's got to be a killer, right? They're like, we are.
After all this long,
He's still hurting over Joseph, and he's bringing it back up at this moment when the money is falling out.
Not only does it make them look like he knows, but it also is hurting them even more.
Yeah. Exactly so. The humiliations upon
keep pulling this off.
Humiliations upon humiliations, okay? And so imagine what's going on in their minds. And back to Brother Shannon's point, right?
What?
Particularly Judah. Because Judah's the one that sold him. Right? What must he think? What must he be feeling? Now, all the brothers, but Judah. Okay. So then, back to the scriptures, starting in verse 37. Reuben said to his father, "You may kill my 2 sons if I don't bring Benjamin back to you. I'll be responsible for him. I promise to bring him back." But Jacob replied, "My son will not go down with you. His brother Joseph is dead, and he is all I have left." Right? So we see how important Benjamin is. If anything should happen to him on your journey, you would send this grieving, white-haired man to his grave. It'll kill me. That's basically what he said. It'll kill me. Right? So, is this an empty promise? The brothers want to go redeem Simon immediately. Like let's go. We got to get back and get Simeon. We need to take his brother. Okay? Reuben even pledges the lives of his own sons for Benjamin. But is this an empty pledge? Think about what he's done. Now, we saw that Jacob was lamenting for Simon, or Simeon, okay? We saw that. And so what does Reuben do? He said, well, you can kill my kids. Oh, wait. You can kill your own grandkids if I don't bring your son back to you. Wait, what? Right? Now, they may have been little urchins, right? Little rascals, right? But there's no way Jacob would take the lives of his own grandchildren.
I kill my kids first.
Shannon, don't you feel loved?
Every day.
This is, to me, what I see here is Reuben's doing a little grandstanding. All right, you can kill my kid. There's no way he's killing his own grandkids.
That was a reason for him to see if he could go through the same pain his father's going through.
So I thought about that. Like, is Reuben offering to put himself in the place of his father? But I don't see it. I just don't see it. I think this is more Reuben trying to be the oldest.
Or is that the pride talking?
Yeah, but I think this is Reuben just trying to be the oldest, trying to be, prove that, hey, I'm fixing to be the patriarch. I'm going to be leader of the clan one day. So he makes this offer. I think this is an empty pledge. He thinks he's going to go down there and here's Benjamin, give me back Simon, we're going home. See ya. Right? And he's going to get them all back. But we see that Jacob has not taken comfort from his other wives or his other children other than Benjamin. Right? So while I think he does have affection for his other children, he received no comfort for Joseph except from Benjamin. Right? Benjamin, it's hard to say if Benjamin was a carbon copy of Joseph or they were just brothers of the same mother, right? And that's truly
closest to each other, like Benjamin and Joseph. They might have been the closest, and that's why he took Saul.
Well, Benjamin, you got to remember, Benjamin and Joseph were born of Rachel. Rachel was
His favorite.
his true love. The other wives were wives of contract or convenience. Rachel was his true love.
But he wanted to be buried with Leah.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. But Rachel was his true love.
That's true.
Rachel was his true love. Now, Rachel's born out on the trail too, or buried out on the trail too. So
It's a good way to treat your favorite.
so we see that, and Jacob is full of fear for Benjamin. He refuses to let Benjamin go down with him or with them, and so they don't go immediately, but time is against them. Okay? Remember, this is the famine, and they do not have, it will not be very long. Scripture won't tell us how long it will be, but there won't be very long, and they will have to make the trip. And that's what we'll start with next week. We'll pick our story up with the return of the brothers to see Joseph. All right, so that's it. That's all I got for this evening.
I wonder how you explain that